Hello, hockey fans of all ages, shapes, and sizes. Been a little while since I've done one of these. I guess there was nothing to say for a long time, actually. But I feel in light of the salary cap going up and to adjust for inflation and all these blockbuster trades, it's pretty wild out there right now. So I feel like there's a lot of juicy stuff to talk about. I guess the thing I been pondering lately is the what's the formula for a Stanley Cup, and I feel it's like a centerman, kind of like a two-way playmaker type guy, good defensively and also offensively gifted, and then a winger that's like a power forward, high scoring, etc. A defenseman that's like a puck mover distributor, and a goalie. You got to have a hot goalie too to kind of seal the deal. So I ran some scenarios. Just I'll reference it just so it'll be easier to get it all right. Chicago back in the day: Taves, Kane, Keith, and Nemo and Crawford, and then Vegas: Eichel, Marchessault at wing, and Petro on D, and Aiden Hill, and then honorable mention to Logan Thompson, who got re-upped in with the Capitals, which is well deserved. Florida, you got Barkey, and then Reinhart, Verhage, and of course Kachuk, who was like limping at the end of the series. So I'd say more Reinhart this past year, and more Kachuk the previous year, like he carried the team on his back. So, and then you got Gustav Forsling and Ekblad. I think Ekblad was kind of like injured and coming back. I can't remember which year, but both of those guys are like and then of course with the right-handed shot thing that all teams kind of covet, Petro being one of them. Like in this day and age, it's like your Carlsons, Weegsy, Adam Fox and Bouchard, and all these guys that can just shoot absolute lasers on the right side. And I guess for my Sharks, I'm impressed with Wallman's shot. He's taken a lot of guys out. Like he's in the high 90s and in mid 90s almost every good blast he has. So, and then of course Bob, right, in net for Florida. So it's one of those things where you have to have your roles. And then I started thinking about it a little bit more, and I said, with teams really coveting their centers, and most of the Four Nations guys are going to be centermen, and then they'll be off to the wings because they can take face-offs, important draws, and stuff like that. So it's always good to have that in your back pocket. But I would say, like just maybe, some of the wingers are a little underestimated or undervalued, like how Kachuk played, or Marchessault winning the Conn Smythe that year. And I guess like of course Eichel's amazing and Taves and that, but like Kane plays on the wing and he scores the game winner that one year against Philly, etc. So yeah, it's just really interesting. And you think of like, I know it's offense, but like your offensive lineman or your defensive lineman for your team being so important in football, is that like kind of your grinders and your defensive guys? Like I'll use the Sharks example, like your Nico Sturms or like your Luke Cunnin kind of grinder guys on the, Barclay Goodrow or Goody, really good leaders. And is that how, like a good offensive lineman, good defense makes Brady so special? Obviously, that's a hard thing to do, but, just with the Super Bowl coming up with, Mahomes and KC, right? Like they don't make any mistakes. So you got to have a team. These are team sports. So, unfortunately for guys like Josh Allen, he just kind of comes up to it against one of the best. Maybe Mahomes will be, as good or even better than Brady by the end of his career. Who knows, right? So the comparisons are real. And I got thinking maybe I'm sleeping a bit on the importance of wingers. So, like if I look into the future in the next probably 3 years, I would say the Sharks should be pretty ultra competitive again and even make a run for the cup if they have the right, like they got Selly, the two-way centerman. Smith can play. He's been playing great on the wing, so I hope they keep him there, as Mike Greer kind of suggested they would. But eventually, yeah, like I guess it's kind of thing like they put Kane and Taves together for a while when they were younger, and they tried Selly and Smitty this year, and and then they had the Lund line, so the Sharks are going to have to draft into their Lund, maybe Victor Eklund. I don't think they're going to draft around the 5th or 6th position where he'll likely be taken. That'd be kind of neat, like the Sedins back in the day. Anyway, yeah, like I just look at Selly and then Smitty, or you got Holtz and Musty and some of these other wingers like Eki, of course, he's starting to stand out. So maybe he's the guy to take them to the promised land. Nothing slighting against Smith, right? And it's like wingers can get hot at different times. And as you saw Kachuk the first year, it's not like he was unnoticed when they went to the finals and lost. When they won, it's not like he wasn't noticed, but guys like Reinhardt that they acquired, and some of those guys really stepped up, right? And then they got like their Okposo and like the leadership grinder guys, right? So maybe that takes you over the top. You never know, right? It's like, what's the magic formula for this? So I keep delaying on saying it, but yeah, it's like, that's probably the forwards, and you got a guy like Bordelot, right? He's 23 years old. I hope him and Beasted get called up because, yeah, like, I mean, if Wenberg's injured for a few games here, then maybe Beasted can get a couple games in the NHL and then go back down and like learn some lessons and whatever. And then maybe you keep Bordelot up to fill the third spot, or if Wenberg's still the third pairing, and then has power play minutes, maybe you give Bordelot like a solid shot at 2C, which I've vlogged about in the past. And yeah, you got to kind of see what you have with your assets. And I love incredibly what Greer has done. Like, if you look at all the trades, it's not like they got guys for nothing, but they've really managed assets well and drafted well. And, getting Musty late in the first round, or like trading up to get Dickinson. And, potentially this year, I would say with the draft, it's like, I saw Matthew Schaefer play some World Junior Championship WJC games, and he looked really impressive, like almost like a Drew Doughty type puck distributor back there, power play quarterback kind of guy. So you need one of those at least, and I don't know if Sam Dickinson is going to be that. Like, let's say, the Sharks end up 2nd or 3rd pick this year. They're probably not getting Schaefer because he's going to go 1, if not number 2. So it's a tough one, right? Like, yeah, like what do you do there? Do you keep stacking defense like Buffalo? And I know there's many thought processes of like, do you take the best player at the time? Or do you take for your need? And I would argue best player almost always, but there are circumstances where, yeah, like now Buffalo has made Dahlin captain, and a guy like Power kind of feels like a little bit in the shadow, perhaps. And, it's like you can kind of harm players' development or whatever from leadership standpoints or whatever. It's like a corporation, right? And it's a business, as Rick Tocchet said when he talked about JT Miller and all these other forwards that have been, wingers that have been traded, like JT Miller, I think is a natural winger. He plays center too, so maybe both. And then like Mikko and Hall and, Farabee and Kuzmenko. I think people are talking about, like, he's not like a clown type personality, but he's kind of hilarious. I've seen some skits and they really loved him. So I think he'd be a kind of a Torts kind of guy, as long as he doesn't clown around too much and he still work hards and grinds. Like, Torts loves those kind of guys. So I think that'll be a good fit. I know people are worried about him. And, just with that said, whatever was going on with PD and JT, it's like PD seems like a very intelligent guy. And it's like he comes across as cold sometimes and calculating, but maybe he's just really super introverted. And you kind of see this wry smile in the interview that it's like he's happy it's over. And I don't know, it's just like there's not really a winner. And like I love an emotional guy too because I am one. And like you see McDavid losing his mind, like going bonkers in the Amazon series, that one game, and I loved it, right? It shows a lot of heart, and that's what as long as like you're not like beating up on people like physically or emotionally, like torturing people and chirping to the point of like you're an a-hole. It's like I don't really mind like a really emotional guy saying, "Come on, guys," like we saw a different side of Pavelski. When you look at clips back when they were going to the finals that one year, I think it was like the 2019 one, or I could be wrong, but it's just like guys that you wouldn't expect to have a massive voice in the room. Like I know Goody is, some of the fans are like, "Oh, why'd we bring him back? He doesn't even want to be here," but he's a professional, and I think he's a legend. The guy can score in a shoebox or a phone booth, and he finds space in the playoffs where, like that's like a, maybe like a more Martone kind of guy where he makes a great tip in for a big game for Canada, right? And he's in front of the net. So like these guys like Goody and that are grinders and stuff, when the playoffs hit, it's more defensive and the game slows down a lot. So like when you see this wheeling and, guys freewheeling and stuff, and they're calling every little kind of clutch and grab hook, whatever, in the new modern NHL, that kind of whistles go away in the playoffs. And you need guys like Goody or, Mikko Rantanen's not like, he's a moose. He's like a tank. He's not as fleet of foot as like a guy like McKinnon or Quinn Hughes or Jack Hughes or any of those guys, right? It's like all guys have their roles. So, yeah, with that said, I think that seeing the new cap increase, it's interesting because, yeah, it fights inflation. All the millionaires need to buy homes too, right? So maybe their $3 million home has got to be bought for 5 or 10 million now. Anyways, I'm jealous, maybe a little bit, but mostly kidding. Yeah, it's just like these guys who demand the salaries now, and it's going up like 25 million over the next couple years. God forbid anything happens, like whatever the last 4 years was. But it's like you can kind of project that out, and it's in line with inflation. I think it helps teams like the Leafs probably keep a Marner at the end. And I know like people were just like, get rid of him after the last playoffs and stuff. And this year will be another test too, to see if he just walks in free agency. So I think some of the teams have hedged their bets if they thought there was any whiff of a guy potentially moving, like with the Sharks, like with Granny or whatever. Like a team pays your price that you think the guy's worth. And I think in the situation of Colorado and Carolina, it's just like, yeah, like they might have felt both guys would walk. I think Natchez had another year on his deal, but there was a lot of uncertainty before he kind of did this little bridge or whatever it was. And he's like, he might walk or whatever. And you're hearing he's going to get traded the whole year. So it's just kind of like maybe Rantanen, even if he wanted 12.5, like 100 million or whatever, maybe they just saw it with Makar coming up and we don't need him. We got other guys or whatever. I personally think it might have been a mistake, but you never know. Like the empty netter guys, shout out. They're talking about Crosby maybe coming to Colorado, and it's like with the cap going up next year, and what will teams do at the deadline? We'll see. But if maybe Crosby feels like I think it's not even the same as Gretzky. Or like it's more like a Messier type thing. Like Messier, you associate him as an Oiler, but then also a Ranger because he won another cup there. And Gretzky, you kind of think of him as like mostly an Oiler, but like also a King. But like if Crosby left the Pens, it'd be more like even like a Ray Bourque situation, right? It'd just be like, hey, can I grab another cup? And like he obviously wants to compete the next couple years too. So to be highly competitive on a team like Colorado, I know people are saying, oh, it's never going to happen. He's got a no move clause or whatever, but you just never know, right? Like, I think a guy like Morgan Riley, I'm not speaking for him because I haven't talked to him, but maybe he's not super happy with Berube's kind of management of him as like a more defensive style player because he's more offensive and he's doesn't feel like this is natural or whatever. Like, who knows? A guy like him could wave his clause at the end if he feels like, okay, the Leafs haven't done enough. Guys are getting injured. Look at Carolina now. Holy crap. Like, so I think that the cap really helps Carolina probably sign Rantanen at least, and for sure, I would say. Before those numbers got projected out, I kind of thought like, oh, maybe they won't be able to sign him because they got like so much up against the cap that and their team's amazing, right? It's been like a competitor, like a stalwart in the East or the Metro for how long, right? So I just was wondering about that, but seeing those new cap numbers, I'm like, hey, but something I thought about was I watched, I think it was What Chaos, great podcast with Taylor Hall, and he said, I'm so sick of being, well, he didn't say specifically, they kind of like led him in an interview sort of fashion to say like, yeah, like I'm tired of being traded. I'm sure they talk briefly before going on, like, what do you want to talk about? Is there anything you don't want to talk about, etc. They've had him on a few times, so there's kind of a trust there, but I keep thinking that, like, what if the Sharks offered Hall like between 45 and 50 mil for like 7 years? He's 33, maybe he's 34 by the offseason, I don't know, but he's getting up there in hockey years, right? And like such a good guy, he's so intelligent, and these intelligent guys are dangerous, right? Like a PD or these really like in their head kind of people, super analytical. Taylor Hall won a Hart Trophy, and he's like an ultimate competitor, and just for some reason it hasn't worked out for him. So I kind of look at a guy like Toffoli, who also is a great family man. I hear the way Taylor Hall talks about his wife and being so supportive, and like Toffoli is such a winner. And you look at a guy like Hall, it's like, I think the Sharks should really make a move to bring this guy on, and knowing like you're probably not getting that whole contract. And they've eaten Hurdle's contract for quite a ways out, but Pickles will be coming off the books here soon, and Burnsy next year, I think. So, like, Pickles is great with leadership for the defensemen, especially if you land the first pick and get Schaefer. Wow, that'd be amazing. Like, learning from a guy like Pickles or, Goody and stuff like that, right? It's like just a guy like Taylor Hall. I feel like he's, he wants to win a cup, and I think if he wins one in Carolina, it might even be easier to draw him to San Jose. But you could say, listen, we know you have to believe in us, and we will give you the option to leave if you want, like later do like a modified trade clause or something. If he's just like, all right, this rebuild is not working. This is the Buffalo Sabres. Sorry, Sabres. I say that because Hall's like, I'm not a Sabres fan, and that clip's probably going to be out there forever. But yeah, it's like, I think that if they stick to their plan, the Sharks are going to be just dynamite in 3 years, 4 years time. And if you say to a guy like Hall, come in, you'll have a place, like he'd probably get an A or something or whatever, an alternating A. Like, they've got a lot of great leadership, insulating their young kids, young adults, whatever, in Selly and Smitty, and I think Beestead hopefully will get a call up. And you got all these guys like Holtz and Musty and guys that are a couple years away, but when all these guys come into form, like obviously you need grinder guys and vets on every team, right? Like Patrick Maroon went to the finals like I think 4 years in a row. Corey Perry, those kind of guys, like you need those guys who've been there and done that. Like a Toffoli, etc. And Hall hasn't won the cup yet, but he's been in some deeper runs, like I think with New Jersey. I don't know if that was the year he won the Hart. Sorry, I'm not. But I just, listening to his interview, such a smart guy, very, very intuitive, and he's a gamer, and he wants to win. So if Carolina says, hey, we can sign one of you guys, maybe it's him, and maybe Rantanen goes free. But maybe they do the deal for Rantanen long term and they lock him up and they have no extra room for Hall. I think either of those guys, like the Sharks, I think should go for wingers. and really bolster their, their offense around guys like Selly and stuff like that. And Smitty can go to center if he's got a couple good playmaking wingers. And Hall talked about being a sort of a distributor himself and sort of underrated in those ways. So yeah, like if they offered him knowing that he might not even play the final 2 years, saying, listen, we're probably 2 years away from being competitive and then reaching the playoffs again, and 3 years from like making a serious run at it, acquiring at the deadline instead of distributing to teams at the deadline, a different approach. I think that, yeah, like a guy like Hall makes a lot of sense in the offseason too. So the last thing I want to say is from like a leadership standpoint, you got a guy like Goody who's a Sharks legend. He could be a potential captain, like a Rob Blake kind of captain, where went off, played a lot in LA or whatever, came that 1 year, and it was like kind of an interim thing. I really believe that Greer and team are doing a good job with the Logan situation. It's like he is a human being, right? And if he's got this injury, I'm sure he can't stand watching hockey instead of playing it. I don't know if he'll ever come back. It feels like he's done, because he talked about other players with the same kind of illness or disease that are done too. But, I know that sometimes over a couple years, your mind can heal your body. And that's what Johnny Taves is doing right now. And who knows, maybe that guy will drop in on the Leafs or somewhere as like a 2-3C or some crap like that. Maybe the Sharks could grab him. I don't know if no other teams grab him and they're like, oh, your best days are behind you. Maybe he comes in and leads some of these young guys. Like he's probably the perfect mentor for a guy like Selly too, right? Being a two-way guy, multiple Stanley Cup champion. So I don't know. Yeah, it's really interesting. And like the leadership thing with Logan, I think a guy like Ferraro, I call him Ferrari, because he gets the wheels going and he's a bit of a motor mouth. But I heard he's like such a huge presence in the locker room, kind of goofs around, maybe too much. Like I've heard the immature thing, and I don't want to slam him because I think he's a great guy. It's just like, I don't know what his wants are. He's witnessed the rebuild. He's like kind of one of the old guards, and he's seen like so many years of losing. Maybe he's just like, guys, like, just trade me to a contender. Like I want a playoff run here. I don't want to wait another 3 years. And maybe like he would be the fans' favorite, like Logan Couture was to take over the captaincy, right? So I think Greer and team are probably hedging their bets against, what does Logan do? What does Marr do? And, like it's going to Selly for sure, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I can see why they're holding off, because Ferraro's contract is like good till end of next year. And like, he's also 26, so he kind of fits with that maturing defenseman into his prime, into his 30s, as does Liljegren. I used to call him Lillygren, but anyways, that's a different one now. Yeah, like I think the Sharks are really doing a good job at moving on from guys, getting assets back for the guys that are a bit older. I think, yeah, it's like maybe Goody, I don't know, like I don't know what's in his head. I love that he's on the Sharks right now, and he's kind of like joking around with, I think Smith scored his first goal and he gave him a shove from the bench. I thought that was so awesome. And I think like having guys like him and Pickles and, formerly Granny, who's, go win a cup with Cease. I love Cease too. He's played with some of the best guys in the league, and I think he's way underrated. Like he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. So I'm happy for those guys. Too bad Pavs still isn't there, because that'd be almost a for sure Stanley Cup final. But yeah, who knows? Go win a cup, guys. And I'm going to miss Granny, but all the moves kind of make sense, and they acquired him from Carlson. So essentially it's like getting 2 first-round picks, for Carlson. And we'll see what happens with the captaincy of the Sharks. And, oh yeah, I never said, like, the defenseman, it could be like, so yeah, recapping here, and then I should end this because I'm almost 25 minutes here. But, maybe Luca Cagnoni, Kegs, or like Dickinson, if they reach their ceilings and they become that, Hughes type guy, like Huggy Light in Cags, or like a Heiskanen like Dickinson, or whatever, if they become that kind of guy. Like, I have my worries of Dickinson a little bit because I saw him at the World Juniors versus Schaefer, and maybe it was just Schaefer's just green and young and just foolish, because I thought, wow, like that was insane how he just decked himself into the net. I thought like hockey IQ points maybe disappeared here. In all fairness, I hope he's okay, and I'm sure he's going to be an amazing player, probably like a Drew Doughty. So yeah, they like, and Doughty went number 2 behind somebody big name. I don't know which draft, but anyway, it's like, who knows who the Sharks are going to get, but I would say like Misa or like Hagens, it's like Martone, those 4 guys are kind of locked up in the top 4. So I'm pretty sure the Sharks, even if they lose the lottery or if they're first and they lose the pick, it's like, if you don't get Schaefer, you still got Dickinson and Cags with high ceilings. You can always acquire like another top right-handed defenseman like an Ekblad, or, that's going to be harder, as I think Professor Hockey sort of pointed out with the cap going up. Some of these teams that might have let those guys walk before the announcement, maybe they'll try to sign them. So yeah, there'll be guys out there in 2 to 3 years as well too. So I think we got a great core in San Jose. So yeah, just my little formula for Stanley Cup is, the center, the winger, the defense, and the goalie. I think that'd be Selly, and as I said, Smitty or Eki, or, that order, not necessarily. Maybe it's Eki and Smitty, but yeah, and then it's like Holtz and Musty and Bordeleau and all these guys that can play wing as well too, right? Like Gushin maybe gets a bigger chance when some guys go, but the team's getting set up right, and then you got, maybe Schaefer, maybe Martone, maybe Misa or Hagens, that kind of fills some more gaps there, and then you got Askey, right? So in goalie, and if he gets hot at the right time, really miss Blackie, Mackenzie Blackwood. He was so awesome in the room and everything, and he was really rounding into shape. So I think they just thought, hey, you know what? Like, go to a team like Colorado. They got a surefire chance at getting to the Stanley Cup Finals. Just go for it, and you're going to get paid and whatever. And I think that was a really, really hard decision. I think the Granny one was probably really hard too. And I think if like Ferraro potentially is next, that's going to be even harder, right? It just gets harder and harder to let go of these guys that have been such amazing Sharks. And Granny was like a great Shark for the time he was there too. So it's so hard to part ways with guys, but if they have other ambitions for a cup final or whatever, or to make a run, and if they can get paid, it is a business. These guys have families and lives outside of hockey, and hockey takes a lot of their life while they're there. That's why they make so much money, right? It just, I think it's interesting if, like, I know it's a hypothetical, but if Morgan Riley, a guy I talked about earlier, if he waves, it's like he could go to any team that's kind of a contender, or like maybe he goes long term, and maybe him and I think, is it Tessa, his wife, maybe they just say, hey, I'll settle on the West Coast for the rest of my career, down in San Jose, and who knows, right? Like a guy like that, I would have thought there's no freaking chance. Or a guy like Marner walking, I thought there's no chance, right? But it's like life is fluid and dynamic. It's always moving. And I think you got to make the best decision at the time to do what you're going to do. So love what Greer and Holy and team have done with the drafts and everything. It's going to be another good one this year. Maybe they'll use the Dallas pick. It is a late one and kind of a little bit thinner draft later. You can still get a nice big right-handed defenseman, probably that down near there, like depending on how good Dallas does too, right? So the last thing on their pick, it's like the 4th round to the 3rd round. It's like, would you rather Dallas kind of flunk out in the 1st round? Not personally, but you know what I mean? To get that higher pick. And then, instead of getting the 3rd pick, if they go to the Stanley Cup Finals, do you know what I mean? So it's like you get a 3rd pick hedged against your 1st pick going down the ladder even further, right? So Anyways, that's it. Let me just look at my notes here. I think I've got it all. Yeah. So we shall see what happens. Cheers.